But Trevor Lawrence, to my knowledge, didn't really grow up too impoverished. He didn't, he wasn't overlooked by many people. He's been, probably since his high school days, one of the most sought-after recruits that we've had in a long time. He was never passed on by a team. He's not going to be drafted super late in the draft. None of that's happened in his football career. He's had a pretty easy college and high school and overall football year for his life. I think in high school he was in Georgia, he was hometown hero guy. He won every game, won state championship games. I don't think he ever lost in high school. Coming to college first year, undefeated, takes his team to the national championship, whoops Alabama. His only really struggle, you could say, is that he lost the national championship to Joe Burrow and then lost to Justin Fields in the national semifinal. Like, what other struggle has Trevor Lawrence had besides losing a couple games and having COVID once? Like, what is there? So I don't dock him for saying he doesn't have that chip on his shoulder, because he has nothing to have a chip on his shoulder about. And he even said later in the interview, he can't fabricate that. He can't make up a chip on his shoulder, because that's just not natural. It's not who you are. So you can't just make up a bad backstory or something to give yourself motivation. You can't fake it. So don't blame him for that. But with that being said, not having a chip on your shoulder, it could relate to something. I mean, it could impact the way you play. Not saying it's his fault, but it could impact the way he play. I mean, you look at players like Kobe Bryant, who, made famous the Mamba mentality, which is, you wake up at 6 a.m., you go to the gym, you eat, you go to the gym, you do some work, you then go to the gym, and you eat, you sleep, and you breathe basketball. He honed that in. It made it seem like that's the way to be successful. Michael Jordan did the same thing. Tom Brady does the same thing. They can't get, you cut their heads open, you're going to find a football there. That's the way those top guys are. And that's why it's such a big criticism when a player comes out and says something like this, like, oh, can you even be the best if you don't live and breathe and sleep and eat football? Like, that's the question with it. And for me personally, the way I find this, it's not an issue to me. I mean, maybe that's just because personally it's not an issue for myself either. So maybe I just relate to it that way, but I don't find an issue in it, And I'm not saying I'm comparable to Trevor Lawrence in this sense, but I played soccer in high school. I played soccer for a long time, and I always had this thought, like, I had teammates around me, like in high school. I played up until my senior year. I had teammates around me who wore soccer jerseys everywhere, who watched the Premier League and all this all the time. They were going to soccer fields every weekend to play. They were practicing, doing stuff outside of everything. Like, they love soccer. But for me, and I wasn't bad. I was pretty good. I'm not trying to self-gloat, but I thought I was pretty good. I didn't do all that. I played the games the weekend. I loved playing soccer. I went to the practices every week, which is 2, 3, 4 times a week. I did all of that, but outside of the mandatory stuff, I was doing what I wanted to do. I was, watching TV, hanging out with friends, just doing stuff. And I never found an issue with that. It didn't really affect my play. I mean, sure, I could have practiced more and been better, but I already thought I was pretty good, and I'm pretty convinced I could have gotten, I could have gone to college to play soccer somewhere. But it didn't affect me in that way. And not compare myself to Trevor Lawrence, because he's miles ahead of whatever skill I had in our respective sports. But Trevor Lawrence, we see what he's been able to do. He's like that. He's that player. He's amazing. And, I'm sure he goes to the gym more than he probably should. I'm sure he goes to sleep on time because he wants to be the best before game day. I'm sure he puts in work with his teammates in the offseason. He does all that. We've seen him do all of that. Just that chip on your shoulder is just, that internal drive. It's like, yes, you can go to the practice, but are you doing that just because you have to, or are you doing that because you want to? That's the question. You want to play football because you want to, not because you have to, or just because you want the good paycheck you get out of it. That's kind of the thinking behind all this. And for those who are worried that Trevor Lawrence won't perform well because of not having a chip on your shoulder, I mean, just look at his resume that he's had, even just in college. Undefeated in high school, won state championships games, comes to college at Clemson, 39-3 record. I don't care about the ACC crap. 39-3 is respectable, 13-1 average per season. That's respectable for anybody. So I don't care about the ACC crap. 39-3 in college, completion percentage of 66.6, 2 out of 3 completions per pass, 90 touchdowns, 17 interceptions in 3 years. That averages about, let's see what my math is, that's roughly 30 touchdowns to 5 picks, 5.5 picks per season as well. Won a national championship game, went undefeated as a freshman, and has been to the college football playoff 3 times in his 3 years, made the championship game 2 out of those 3 years. Kid's a winner. And even if, he doesn't have that chip on his shoulder, he can win you games. He'll do it. He just has that in him. It doesn't matter if if he's not struggling with some deep, dark internal problem or chip on his shoulder that's trying to motivate him to be better and better. He can do that himself. It doesn't matter.